Hey everybody, and welcome back to the entirety of deck profiles from Swords Non-Meta Tournament number 3. I'm actually only going to be going through the 5th through the 12th place deck profiles. If you do want to see the first 4 deck profiles, you can go ahead and go to my channel and view each of those individually because I have a more in-depth version of those. So go ahead and check those out on my channel. Other than that, we're going to get started with the 5th place deck profile, which is from Godlimation. Just barely missing the top cut, unfortunately, on his part. But he did opt to play Plunder. Close enough, Plunder Patrol. And this deck is a very complex deck, and it has some very, very large potential in this tournament. And I think that it's honestly one of the better picks. Gen X Undying, being able to search for your Gen X controller, is also like pretty good. Sends from your deck to grave as well, so you can send any of your plunders. So it's really nice just being able to set up your graveyard. I am a little unfamiliar with this deck, but I do know that like Gen X Undyne is a really good normal summon in this deck as well. Magician Souls, just being able to cycle a lot of your cards. I do know that your field spell is recyclable. Since it's in your grave, you can send or you can add one of your Plunder Patrols from your spell and trap zone to your hand, and then return this back to your hand as well. So it's a very good resource. So I feel like having the Magician Souls to like cycle this card is really good. I'm not sure if the other ones actually have grave effects. I'm assuming that they do. I maybe not. Actually, I could be wrong. But I do know that Shipyard is probably one of the best cards, spell trap cards in the game, or not in the game, but for this deck at least. And then for the rest of the list, obviously he's just opting to play like the shipping diffusion summon, I believe. And then the 3 copies of Emblem, and I guess this just gives monsters attack. I don't know. I'm a little unfamiliar with these still as well. Plunder Patrol Booty, being able to basically tutor out any of your plunders from the extra deck, since you can make something a different attribute and then use your plunders to hop aboard their ships from the extra deck. 1 copy of Desires. It's really interesting that he's opting not to play Extravagance. I guess it makes sense since he does want to see a lot of these cards pretty often. Triple Call by the Grave to stop hand traps, and then it looks like he's on quite a big hand trap lineup here. It looks like he's on 9. So that is really nice as well. For the extra deck, 3 Blackbeard, 2 Liss, 2 Moerk, 2 Brawn, Dragster Drag Knight, Bahamut Shark, Toad, and Anima, and Almirage. So I'm not saying anything specific here that's like out of the ordinary. I think like he should probably be playing Link Karibo, but I mean, maybe not. I don't really see like a huge reason why. I guess you can just link your souls into like a Blackbeard anyways, but I don't know. Seems a little interesting to me. 2 copies of Judgment, 2 copies of Strike, some Kaijus in the side deck, differently attack valued just because of Kaiju Slumber, since you can obviously get something. It's really interesting that he's not playing Humongous, since Humongous is the smallest attack Kaiju, since Gamma Seal is banned in this format, if I remember correctly. Yep. So Gamma Seal is banned, but Humongous is the next lowest Kaiju that he just, I guess, opted not to play for some reason. I don't know. Interesting. 3 interrupted Kaiju Slumber, since this is just pretty good. 2 Twin Twisters just for back row, as well as the Lightning Storm and the Evenly Matched. I think that's about it for this list. I mean, other than that, I mean, it's seems like a little not standard, obviously, because of the Gen X Undyne, but I mean, the rest of the list is pretty standard, I guess. Moving on to the next list, we have Nightmare's Shaddoll Artifact list, which is another Shaddoll deck, and he just also barely missed out on top cut just due to bad tiebreakers, unfortunately. But we'll go through his list as well, since Scythe is banned. The next best artifact, other than Lancia, obviously, is Morale Attack. So he's opting to play 3 of those, since you can set them off of Sanctum. 3 Veiler, 1 copy of Ariel, 3 copies of Wendy, 3 copies of Beast, 1 Dragon, 3 Hedgehog, 3 Squamata. Just playing 3 of like all the good ones. Quite a large Shaddoll engine as well. It is a little interesting that he's not opting to, I think there's one that he's missing here that he's not playing. I could be wrong. Maybe this is all of the correct Shaddolls. But pretty large Shaddoll lineup. Looks like 14. 3 copies of Thunder King Ryo. Floodgate on legs. I mean, you're not using your normal summon, so you might as well. And he's not opting to play the Invoked Engine as well. So, I mean, it makes sense why he's using, some other Floodgate light monster. 3 copies of El Shadal Fusion, 3 copies of Fusion Recycling Plant, 1 copy of Polymerization to search from the Fusion Recycling Plant. This is really good, just being able to recur your resources. It's like insane. 3 copies of Shadal Fusion, insane card. Artifact Sanctum, 1 copy of Impermanence, and 1 copy of Shadal Incarnation. So obviously the Sanctum's just to summon the Morale Tech to get a free pop on your opponent's turn. Super good card. You should probably be playing like 2 copies of Trap Trick, or at least 2 or 3 copies of Trap Trick in his list, but I'm not seeing it here. Maybe it's just something he overlooked. I'm not too sure. In the extra deck, he's playing 3 copies of App Cologne, 3 copies of Construct. Looks like the App Cologne he went a little overboard with. I'm not sure if you need the 3, but it seems pretty good regardless. 1 Dweller, 1 Borreload, 1 Cross Sheep, 3 copies of Gravity Controller. It's really weird that he's playing 3 of this. I don't know if I would play 3. It seems like maybe 2 is enough. 1 copy of Phoenix, 1 copy of Bomber Dragon, 1 copy of Abomination. Moving on into the extra deck. Oh, sorry, not extra deck, side deck. He's playing 3 copies of Cosmic Compass. So this is a normal summon that gives you like tokens. Honestly, this card is really cool, and I didn't know it existed. But free link material, I guess, pretty cool. I'm assuming this is just to like outboards, since you can just like summon a ton of tokens and then make like a Borreload or like I don't know, Cross Sheep, or I don't know. You can do some really neat stuff with this, I think. So it seems really interesting. He just doesn't seem to have a lot of link monsters to summon outside of like maybe like Cross Sheep, like Phoenix, maybe. I don't know. I guess he could also summon Abomination, because you can go, I don't know, makes sense. Anyways, 3 copies of Ghost Mortar and Moonlit Chill, 1 copy of Phantom Skyblaster, 1 copy of Link Spider, 1 copy of Link Rubo. I'm assuming this goes in with the Cosmic Compass and Skyblaster engine. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone and 3 copies of Shade Brigandine. I'm assuming this is to just get access into your Dweller when you have the specific matchups against that. Moving on into the 7th place Decorophile, we have Goof Ghost, who was on Trap Trick. So, honestly, this deck is really solid. Obviously, the 9 copies of Trap Trick monsters, 3 Murmilla, 3 Mantis, 3 Dionea. I don't think there's anything you change there. And then the 1 Saki Raigeki. 3 copies of DD Kuro, 3 copies of Valor, just 6 hand traps here. It looks like he's not playing Impermanence, so yeah, just the 6 hand traps. 3 copies of Exceed. This card is like the best Trap Trick support ever existed. Just so broken. It's crazy. 1 Bottomless Trap Hole. 2 copies of Lost Wind. It's really interesting that he opted to play this over Titanocider, but I'm seeing this come up more often in NMT than Titanocider, so I guess that makes sense. 2 copies of Torrential Tributes. 3, or it's really interesting that he's not playing 3 of this, but interesting, yeah. 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, 2 copies of Gravidigger's Trap Hole, 2 copies of Trap Trick, 2 copies of Crackdown, 3 copies of Compulse, and 3 copies of Shade Brigandine. Shade Brigandine is just insane in this deck. Being able to get like Reader with a trap is like so good. 2 copies of Judgment to round off the list. So it might be a little weird why he's playing 2 copies of Trap Trick, but I think that there is some merit to this, playing 2 of this over 3 of this, because it locks you into 1 trap card for the rest of the turn. And this is honestly just here to fix certain hands. It's not really there to, like, I don't know exactly how to explain this very well, but you don't want to see multiples of this, and you don't really want to see it in a handful of traps. If you draw 5 trap cards, you can't really set your trap trick, because then your trap trick is dead until you activate another of your traps. And also, if you have 4 other trap cards, it makes the other 3 of your trap cards dead, because you're sending something and then just using it, and then the other 3 other traps are dead. So you have to prioritize this card to be last in activation, which really sucks, but it still is a really good card. Moving on into the extra deck, 3 copies of Sarah, 1 copy of Phoenix, 1 copy of Unicorn, 1 copy of IP, 1 copy of Link Spider, 1 copy of Borreload Dragon, 1 Rafflesia, 1 Analameris. This also gets like your Trap Tricks back from grave. This is so good just for hands where you can't make Sarah, or you want to make Sarah or something. I can't remember exactly the reason, but I know this card is pretty good. I think it's for the reasons when you have, it's when you have Shade Brigandine plus Exceed, I believe, and no Trap Trick monster. You can make this and then turn this into a Sarah. So that is a way to get into your Trap Tricks engine without Trap Tricks monster. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Redoer, 1 copy of Emerald, 1 copy of Tornado, and 1 copy of Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. For the side deck, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, pretty makes sense, honestly. This is just probably the next best hand trap to play. 3 copies of Dark Hole. This is pretty good, just outs of board going second. 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, 2 copies of Feather Dust, or sorry, not Feather Duster, Storm Duster. 2 copies of Master Stick, since it is semi-limited. 2 copies of Stygian Dirt as well, since it is kind of a floodgate against those Xyz-based decks. Moving on into the 8th place Decorophile, we have Neospatian Heroes by Hero Master. This deck is really interesting. I guess the main card of the deck is pretty much just Neos Fusion, but as you can see, we'll go through the list. 2 copies of Neos, 1 copy of Honest Neos, since it is searchable. 3 copies of Vion, since Vion is probably the best starter. However, he's not playing he's playing 1 polymerization in the deck. But this card, 1 by itself. Looks like he's not playing Sunrise in the extra deck, actually, which is a little weird. But unless I'm missing it, I don't think so. But typically with this and Sunrise, you can get 2 fusion monsters on the field pretty much for free. It's pretty crazy. I believe you can get an Esquaro or, I don't know, it just depends on what else. Any other elemental, like, fusion monster. 1 Shadow Mist, 1 Solid Soldier, 1 Liquid Soldier, 1 Stratos, since it is limited for this. 1 copy of Adesticle, 3 copies of Neospace Connector, 2 Air Hummingbird, 2 Grand Mole, 2 Dark Panther. I think these 3 are probably the best Neospatians. Yeah, or I guess next to Aqua Dolphin. I think Aqua Dolphin's probably better, but he's only opting to play 1 of those. 1 copy of Rainbow Dragon, 3 copies of Neos Fusion, 3 copies of Miracle Contact, and obviously the Rainbow Dragon for Rainbow Neos. Dark Calling for the Bane, 1 copy of Miracle Fusion, 1 copy of Polymerization, 1 copy of Hero Lives, 1 copy of Impermanence, 2 Effect Veilers, so I guess like the 3 hand traps here, the 3 copies of Convert Contact, and finally 2 copies of Keeper of the Dragon Magic to search for your fusion, I guess your polymerization. And I guess it can like get you some materials like, recycled back, which is kind of cool. I think that like just having Vion is just better. So I don't know. This card is, I guess, more copies of Vion. Moving on to the extra deck, 2 copies of Brave Neos. This is actually really good in tandem with Neos Fusion, since it makes Neos Fusion literally a foolish burial for any level 4 lower monster. So that is really crazy. Because of Brave Neos. 1 copy of Grand Neos, 1 copy of Dark Neos, 1 copy of Air Neos, 1 copy of Ab-Zero, 1 copy of Nebula, Sunrise. Oh, he is playing the Sunrise, so I am mistaken there, actually. 1 copy of Bane, 1 copy of the Rainbow Neos, 1 copy of Fusion Dragon, as well as Durgos Topelia, because he is on the Super Polymerization in the extra deck. And it looks like he was playing Isolde, but I don't think it came up at all. If it did, I'm sorry. It did not do anything from what I remember. So I'm not sure why this is here. I think we fixed it, maybe. I don't remember, honestly. 3 copies of the Twin Twisters, 1 copy of Deep Barrier. Actually, the Isolde doesn't even have any equip spells to send. So I think, honestly, it didn't even matter, since I don't think he made it. I'm not sure though. Okay, anyways, 3 Twin Twister, 1 D-Barrier, 2 copies of Judgment, 3 copies of Phantasme, 1 Pinkertops, 2 Droll and Lockbird, 2 Ghost Ogre to round it off, and then obviously the 1 Super Poly. 9th place, we have Hexagon's meme list of Volcanic Paleo. So basically the synergy with this deck is that Morella can send Blazer Exotic Reload, which is a Raigeki on your opponent's turn. So that's basically the idea of the deck. So we'll go through it. So 1 Pinkertops, 3 copies of Firestorm Guards, 1 Counter, 3 Rocket, 3 Scattershot, 3 Shell, 3 Duality, just for the extra consistency, as well as 2 copies of Extravagance. These cards are actually really good because even though Extravagance says you can't draw for the rest of the turn, you can still use Duality to excavate and add, so it actually doesn't conflict with Extravagance. 3 copies of Reload, 3 copies of Crackdown, 1 Imperm, 3 Canadia, 2 Dino, 1 Leon, 3 Morella, 2 copies of Olenoides, 2 copies of Judgment, 3 copies of Stormy Air Force. So it's actually really interesting that he's not playing in the side deck any copies of Foolish Burial Goods, since it's technically a Raigeki. 3 more copies of a Raigeki, rather. But anyways, yeah. 1 Anala Malakaris, 2 copies of Opabina, 2 Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, just because it looks like he's playing Waking the Dragon, so he definitely wants to get this on field. 1 Toad, 2 Borolo, 2 Cerberus, 2 Phoenix, 1 Unicorn, 2 copies of Linkuriboh. So it looks like he's not on Magician's Souls, which I feel like definitely has a place in a list very similar to this, because you can send like Reload to Grave and draw a card, and now your reload's set up for the next turn when you draw it. So I don't know. That is definitely something to consider with this list. 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, 2 Dark Hole, 1 Lightning Storm, 1 Hargeki, 1 Evenly, 2 Heavy Storm Duster, 2 Solemn Strike, and 3 copies of Waking the Dragon in the side deck. Moving on into 10th place, we have Wolf83, who played Melodious. So I helped him build this list, so I have a fairly good idea of what this deck does. But technically, or basically what the deck does is you try to put 2 fairy monsters on the field to make your Bloom Harmonist. And then you can basically end with a Shuberta, which is like DD Crow, I guess, or more like an Aerial, I guess, during your opponent's turn, which is really nice. Or you can also end with Bloom Diva, just depending on the matchup that you're against. Basically, you just end on either one of these. Bloom Diva is very hard to out for certain decks, so this card is like insane. But basically, like, the idea with this, like the Heralds at least, is that you can search these with Eva, which is just an insane card in the deck, right? So basically, if you draw Eva plus any like extender like Ostinato or First Movement Solo, you're pretty much set. So what you can do is you can use your Ostinato or your First Movement Solo to get a fairy on the field, any of your Melodious monsters or one of your fusion monsters in the case of Ostinato, and then you can normal summon your Eva or normal summon another fairy from your hand, link it off into Bloom Harmonist, discard a card, or in the case where you normal summon a fairy, you discard the Eva, and then you can go ahead and special summon a copy of let's see, it would be like, I think the best hand in this deck is obviously like Ostinato plus Eva plus any fairy, I guess. So you can, Ostinato get your Bloom Prima by sending one of your Melodious Maestras, which is Shofina, and you can also send another one like Cannon, I guess. Normal summon whatever fairy you have. In this case, like if you had like an Aria, then you can link your Bloom Prima and your Aria into a Bloom Harmonist. Harmonist discards Eva, and then you're going to special summon a copy of Soprano, as well as you can get pretty much anything at this point, like a copy of Sonata here is fine. And then you have the boost from Sonata, which is really nice. And then you can use Soprano to add back one of your Melodious monsters, like a Shofina, back to your hand. And then you can also use Eva's effect to banish the Aria and the Bloom Prima. You actually do this on the Link summon. And then you can search for 2 Heralds. So you can search for like a orange and a green. And then you have 2 forms of negation here, assuming you have another fairy in your hand. Then you can use your Soprano and your Sonata, or your Soprano and your Bloom Harmonist into a copy of Shuberta. So it's a pretty good idea there. What's really also cool is if you happen to not open Ostinato, you can actually just summon the Shofina and then add another fairy back to your hand. In fact, you can add the Eva back to your hand, so that when you discard your Herald, discarding a fairy from your hand, you're discarding the Eva, and then the Eva can add you more Heralds, so you just get extra negations on your opponent's turn as well. So that's like the idea of the deck. Basically is to just stun your opponent with negates, and hopefully they can't out your Shuberta, which is like 3,000 attack, or your Bloom Diva, which is extremely hard to kill. So 3 Area, 3 Cannon, an Elegy, 3 Eva, 2 Ghost Ogre, 2 green, 2 orange, 3 orange, 1 purple, 2 Honest, 2 Score, because this is like another Honest, 1 Shofina, 3 copies of Sonata, 3 Soprano, 3 Solo, 3 Ostinato, 1 Foolish, 1 for 1, 1 Desires, and 2 Extravagance, since your extra deck is not very tight at all. Side deck, you have 1 Tops, 1 Green Light, 2 copies of Purple, basically just the remaining Heralds, 3 Herald of the Abyss, which is a really good like card to out your opponent's board. It's very similar to a Kaiju, but you're not playing Kaijus, so this is like another way to out an opponent's card. 1 Lightning Storm, 1 D-Barrier, 1 Evenly, 2 copies of Solemn Judgment, and 3 copies of Warning. Moving on into the next list, we have Dark Magician, that was played by Conman. So he played a little interesting, more of a list this time, opting to play 2 copies of Extravagance because his extra deck wasn't too bad. And he also opted to play Witchcrafter Golem Maruru. So for the rest of these lists, I'm just going to mostly show them and talk about them. I'm not really going to go through them. If you do want to go through them, you can for yourself. But pretty much... he opted to play the Super Poly in the main deck just to have access into Starving Venom, Fusion Dragon, as well as Decorophile. And he also opted to have a lot of targets in the side deck as well as cherries, because I assume he was he knew his opponent were going to be playing basically like metal foes. Like he saw these in the previous tournaments, so he obviously thought that they were like decent options to, fuse reveal like a Trident, so your opponent just like loses pretty much. Reveal Alcahest is pretty good as well, or reveal like Sunrise. Also, these are also double as targets for Super Polymerization, since against like a Metal Foes board, you can just fuse off their monsters into Alcahest. Against a like Cyber's deck, you can just fuse off like especially like Salamangreat, you can just fuse off like their cards into Earth Golem and Ignister. Against heroes, you can just fuse any of their tier fusions. Against Salamangreat, you can just obviously you can also play the Earth Golem, but he's opting to play Violet Chimera just to fuse off their monsters as well. Against Blue Eyes, you can just make this, I assume. I'm actually not too familiar with exactly why you would play this over anything else. I don't know, I could be wrong. Echo Max, because Goofy Ghost was playing Crusadia in the previous 2 ones, and he did pretty well with Crusadia, so obviously he decided to play cherries for this one. 1 Saryuja, I'm not sure why this is actually here, so I don't know. 3 copies of Acquisitiveness, which is a really interesting pick as well, just being able to add back his recycled cards. I think this is for if he gets cherries, but I could be wrong. I'm not too sure about that. And then I think other than that, his like list is fairly standard. I mean, it is, a couple cards are really interesting. Obviously the cherries is very interesting that he opted to play that. The Arurus are really interesting that he opted to play those, and as well as the Extravagances. Next list we have Austin, or Get Trolled, who goes by in the Discord, and he opted to play this list, which is Plunder Patrol. And I think he must have messed up with his list because he's playing Neos Fusion, but no targets in the extra deck to summon. I mean, he has the Rainbow Neos in the side deck, but I don't know. I definitely could have just grabbed an older version of the list, so that could definitely be a problem on my part. But yeah, obviously we went over the Plunders a while ago, but looks like he's on Pride of the Plunder Patrol, which is really interesting that he opted to play this. I'm not too familiar with Plunder Patrol lists though, so I'm not 100% on how those work exactly. With that said, I believe that's going to do it for today's video. Yep, that is all of the deck profiles. I know it's a bit longer than I would have liked it to be, but yeah, that's gonna do it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys all in Sorbon's Not a Meta Tournament number 4. Hopefully that'll be up tomorrow or within the next few days, the first feature match. So stay tuned for that. If you do want to play in these, go ahead and join the Discord in the link below. And yeah, that's it.